Use your powers for evil.
Evil? Your evil is mine.
Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. As always, I'm Charles Skaggs, or at least most of the time, and with me in the TARDIS, my partner in time, and everybody's favorite partner in crime, Jesse Jackson.
Hey, Charles. Kind of nice to be back on a every other week schedule.
Yep.
It's, we had gone through some difficult time scheduling, so yeah, and we're here to talk about a modern era regeneration again.
Yes, we are. So now that we're in the modern era, here on episode 97, only 3 away from the big 100, what will we do? Stay tuned, kids.
By the way, that's not a rhetorical question. That is wow, what are we going to do? But
remember, I have the master plan right here.
You always have a plan, Charles. One of the reasons why I love being your partner in this podcast.
Oh, you're so sweet. All right. I may gush. But we do have plans for episode 100. So just everybody relax. It's all good. But today we are going to talk about a very big episode, or at least a couple of episodes. The End of Time. The final 2-part David Tennant era story from the Christmas special of 2009 and the New Year's Day special of 2010, just so David Tennant can say, hey, I was the Doctor from 2005 to 2010, even though he's only really had a 4-year and a little bit of change run as the Doctor.
And one of those years, because he was doing other stuff,
right?
Hamlet. I mean, really, come on, get your priorities straight.
Seriously, I mean, Doctor Who over Hamlet, I would think.
Yes. So he didn't even give us a full season back then. It was just a series of specials.
Yeah, we were at the time. I remember being, I think a lot of Doctor Who fans. I don't think it's just myself. We're a little disappointed that we didn't get a full season. That we were disappointed that Series 5 wasn't, taking place during 2009 as like a regular season. All we got was a series of 5 specials scattered throughout the year. And they were good.
Yeah, they were good.
They were good, so no complaints. But if there's only a complaint, I would just say that it's probably that we didn't get more from David Tennant. That it almost seemed like, okay, we're just going to stagger this out. And he's just kind of like, drawing out his end a little bit.
Yeah, and it almost wishes, and once again, it's been a couple of episodes since we've discussed, you and I, one of our favorite series of all times. I would definitely give it top 5 on my part, Starman.
Yes.
That they would do, instead of, artists always get behind. And so what they would do is they would do kind of flashback, special episodes of Starman that were beautiful in their own right. They were a unique story. They weren't truly, it didn't feel like a substitute. It felt like a little special cameo episode or something in the middle of it.
Right, because it gave you a lot of background information.
Yes.
So it mattered. And I'm glad to see that James Robinson's actually continuing that with his current Wonder Woman run for DC Comics, but with the times past. But it was kind of nice because it kind of spotlighted a character that maybe didn't get enough attention during the main storylines.
Yeah, and so I wish in a way, and it's easy for me to do because I'm not in charge of the purse strings of BBC America or running a show, but it would have been nice to have a Times Past or maybe a a special maybe Eighth Doctor miniseries or something, that could have gotten
something to fill the gap and make it more of a regular season. Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree. Yeah, or at the very least, hey, why didn't they just shoot all these together, combine them into like a mini season?
Yeah,
and go out that way. But
yeah,
but if nothing else, it made a little. I guess it made it a little easier for Tennant fans to say goodbye by staggering it out a little bit to kind of give them that ease off of their Tennant fix. But so let me ask you, Jesse, because since you're obviously a David Tennant fan, and David Tennant is your doctor, as we've talked about many times, what was your reaction to seeing David Tennant go?
So it's interesting. Just in case by some miracle, this is someone's first Next Stop Everywhere episode. Thank you for joining us. I came to the doctor very late, and so was catching up via DVDs. So I was binge watching the series, and really Matt Smith's era was the first I watched every week. Up until that, I was just binge watching. And so I did not feel.
Okay, so you weren't like watching this series live.
Exactly.
When Tennant regenerated.
Right. I watched the regeneration via the DVD, but I watched everything else first before I went and watched that. So So I didn't have the same sense of frustration that a lot of you did because, I had, when they re-showed in BBC America all the specials, I had just recorded them and kind of watched everything in order. So I just felt like, oh, this is great. I'm kind of seeing everything. So as we've gone through this, I have a lot of problems with this two-parter.
Right.
A lot
So I gathered from your emails over the weekend.
Yeah. The same thing I would say, and to be fair, I'm putting aside my passion for David Tennant, and there's often people like, well, of course you love the new Bruce Springsteen album, Jesse. You're going to love everything he does. Of course you love David Tennant. You're going to love everything it is. And I looked at this from a different perspective, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about it because I think there's a lot of filler in this episode, things that they don't explain. And I think this is a mediocre episode at best.
I agree with you.
And I think for one,
especially compared to, we've watched a lot of regeneration stories recently, so now you kind of get where I'm coming from, comparing what's come before,
absolutely,
compared to this.
Yeah, and I just think don't get me wrong, it is. I have no problem with the actual regeneration. I know you do a little bit, but I think it's fine. And we're going to talk more about that. But the actual 2 hours itself. There's some confusion points. There's some filler in there. This whole thing with the Ood and the city being old, and he has to go there, and it doesn't fit. I'm like, what's that got to do with the Master coming back? It seems. And once again, I'm going to put my grumpy pants on. It seems that one of the best modern doctors deserved a better send-off.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree with you. I like this story, but I don't love this story.
I think that's a fair assessment. Yes.
Yeah, and I think there have been better regenerations. I know there's a lot of Tennant fans that just adore this story, and that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's okay to have different opinions on this, really.
Yeah. And all shows are, there is a personal thought to it. And so I get that if this meant a lot to you or you love this story, I'm giving, what we're paid to do, Charles, our substantial salary.
Wait, we're paid
in love.
Where's that? I don't really see my bank account increasing because of the show.
Good point. We're paid in the love and support of our fans.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm a millionaire.
Absolutely,
because I get to spend my time talking Doctor Who with you.
Absolutely. I think he deserved better.
Yeah, I do too. I thought. I think there have been stronger regeneration stories. Not that this is a bad one again, but yeah, this one's a little frustrating for me. I agree there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't need to be in here.
Right.
I think Russell T Davies, because this was written, of course, by Russell T Davies. This was his big send-off story because he left. This is his final story as showrunner on Doctor Who. So I think he tried to cram a lot of things to kind of give his era like a tribute to his run, and which is okay. But there's some stuff in here that is just, it really didn't need to be in here, and it kind of distracted from the main story with dealing with the Time Lords, in my opinion.
Yeah, and especially, David Tennant had some great episodes.
Yeah. It's not Blink. Let's just put it this way. It's not Blink.
Well, and Human Nature and the Family of Blood, an amazing two-parter.
Which is referenced in this story, though.
Yes, it is. I like that. So I just, and everything, and I know everything can't be Blink.
Yes.
I think Blink in a lot of ways, captured lightning in a bottle. And same thing, Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, another a great two-parter. I just not sure this one clicked as much. And it felt just a little bit, kind of like I think would it be Series 4 two-parter when all the greatest hits show up. They do the.
Oh, are you talking about like the Stolen Earth?
Yeah, where where all of basically the Doctor Who Justice League gets together.
Yeah, all the Doctor and all his companions from that era, and they kind of team up, and I agree. I think a lot of fans. There's at least a number of fans would have liked that the Stolen Earth two-parter as Tennant's finale. I think they would have liked that a lot better than The End of Time as Tennant's finale.
Yeah,
granted, we got 5 more stories.
Yeah,
but I think it's a much more powerful story, especially with the stuff with Donna, and they could have. What I would have done is just had that scene in the in the second part where or the cliffhanger, I should say, the cliffhanger at the end of the first part of the Stolen Earth, where Tennant's Doctor is shot by a Dalek and he starts regenerating.
Yeah,
I would have kind of moved that toward the end as like a parting shot from the Daleks as they're kind of like after they're vanquished and they kind of leave. That would have triggered the regeneration into the 11th Doctor. I think that would have been better.
Yeah, and I think as we kind of run things, don't get me wrong, I loved the farewell tour that we're going to talk about. That did not bother me. I liked seeing that, but you may not would have needed that if we're in editing, like if we say, okay, I'm going to take the End of Time, move that as the series 4 finale, do some rechange, and then take the series what was, the big Dalek War with the Justice League, put that as the end, do some rewriting. That would have been a really great send-off for Tennant.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's just looking back at the story now that time has passed.
Absolutely.
Because it's been over 7 years now since this story. Hard to believe, huh? Almost 8.
Yeah,
and it doesn't seem to hold up as well.
Yeah, and this is Monday morning quarterbacking. I mean,
Sunday morning quarterbacking.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said, Charles. Very well said. Good.
Thank you.
All right. So that's my quick summary, and hopefully my fellow Tennant fans aren't going, Jesse, you've betrayed us. You betrayed us. if you continue to listen to the episode, you will hear a lot of 10th Doctor love. I promise you.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a little nitpicking here.
Yes, absolutely.
On our part. So, okay, so yeah, this was. I said this was written by Russell T Davies. This is directed by Eurus Lynn, who's directed Doctor Who on and off since the end of the world, and so he returns here for the Tennant's finale, and obviously there's a lot of guest stars in this one, a lot of notable guest stars. So I'll kind of skip over the companions and returning supporting characters because we know who they are.
Right.
So I'll just concentrate on some of the more notable guest stars in here before we get going. At the beginning we had Brian Cox, who does the voice of the Ood Elder, and he's a pretty notable actor. Brian Cox. I mean, he was in he's been in. He was William Stryker in X-Men 2, X-Men United, the big bad there. He played, now, for Doctor Who Connection, he played Sidney Newman in a little TV movie by the name of An Adventure in Space and Time. So he was Doctor Who's co-creator.
And he was really good in that.
And he was also the very first Dr. Hannibal Lecter in the movie Manhunter, directed by Michael Mann, which was based on Red Dragon.
Yeah, he's also been in a lot of. He played the dad in the Dennis Quaid rookie movie. He's been in a lot of, series. As a guest star. So yeah, a very.
Yeah, I think he's in Troy. He's in a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, so he is everyone. Yeah. He certainly is one of those character actors that has been amazing, and his voice on there is very, very nice.
Right. Yeah, it is. We got a cameo by Russell Tovey returning as Alonzo Frame, Midshipman Alonzo Frame from The Voyage of the Damned. And he, of course, was George, the werewolf, on Being Human, the BBC's Being Human.
Yes.
And he's going to be playing the Ray in the upcoming DC CW TV crossover, Crisis on Earth X. So look forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
So you'll see him there shortly, probably here in about a month or so. And speaking of Being Human, we had Sinead Keenan, who played Adams, the Vinvachi cactus woman, in this story. She was Nina, George's werewolf girlfriend, who also eventually becomes a werewolf on Being Human.
Thank you, Charles. I was looking at her going, I recognize her, but I didn't go to IMDb to look it up. And yes, that's exactly when you said that. Oh, yeah, that's where I'm from.
Yeah, she was Nina. And then she was also, she did a voice on a Big Finish audio called Iterations of I, which was I believe that's a Fifth Doctor audio. And she was in the Five-ish Doctors reboot. So probably a very quick blink and you miss it kind of cameo, but she's in that. So she does have another Doctor Who connection, more Doctor Who connections there. Jessica Hines returns to Doctor Who, and we talked about she was in Human Nature, The Family of Blood. But here she plays Verity Newman. Again, it's a nod to Doctor Who's creators, Verity Lambert and Sidney Newman. And she was previously Jode Renfern in Human Nature. So she kind of portrays her descendant,
yes,
Verity, in this story where she does the book signing, and Tennant shows up to ask her about how Joan is or lives her life.
Yeah, I don't. Will we talk about that a little bit more later?
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
Yeah, we can. So, and then we had June Whitfield, who played Minnie the Menace Hooper. She's notable because if you're a fan of the comedy series Absolutely Fabulous, she plays Adina Monsoon's mother.
Oh, okay.
So she's on that. That's probably where you know her from. Claire Bloom, who plays the mysterious woman, the Time Lord that kind of hides in the background, and we don't know exactly who she is, but apparently she's important for some reason.
Right.
She was the goddess Hera in the original Clash of the Titans back in 1981.
Wow.
And she was also in The King's Speech. So big movie there. Of course, if you're a Supergirl fan, you'll recognize David Harewood, who plays Joshua Naismith. He's, of course, the Martian Manhunter, John Jones, on Supergirl. And he was also Tuck, Friar Tuck, on the BBC series Robin Hood from 2009.
Yeah, one of my complaints is I don't think he got enough to do in this episode. We know what a range he can do through Supergirl and, one of my favorites. And so I kind of was sad.
This is a very one-note character.
Yes, he was. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's just like, oh, I'm a rich bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, it's a very generic. Tracy, I feature. She plays Joshua Naismith's daughter, Abigail. Now, she's currently being seen as the villainous Kuasa on Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
So if you're like, hey, I might have seen her somewhere before, that's probably where if you watched Legends of Tomorrow. Let's see. And we get the return of Alexandra Moen as Lucy Saxon, the wife of sort of, I guess, technically wife of the Master. But, of course, she ends up dying rather early in the story, so...
Yeah, and she was good in that role. I liked her a lot,
Yeah.
So I was glad to see her back. And the small part she played, though, she did really well.
Yeah.
I truly have no.
So lots of cast there.
Yeah, I truly have no big discussion about. Well, I think we didn't have a good cast. I think we had a great cast. It was filled with a lot of good actors. Just I don't know if they were used to the best of their ability,
Yeah, I get you. That
Okay.
the script didn't really serve them well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get into the first topic I want to talk about. Song Yet to Be Sung. And this is a Song Yet to Be Sung. This is a reference to kind of an obscure song by Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction. He did this solo song. And back in 2001, and this song has always kind of stuck in my head because it was the trailer music to the series Smallville, right before it was basically like to tease the series when it first came on the air on the WB. If you remember when the CW was the WB back in the day,
Right.
But I've always liked this Song Yet to Be Sung. So this is, of course, the 10th Doctor, whose song is ending soon. And so I want to get your thoughts on when the Doctor goes to the Ood sphere, and the Doctor is warned by the Ood that the Master is returning.
Okay.
So, and also, like what your thoughts about basically the 10th Doctor in his final story.
I don't get why. It seems overly dramatic, Charles, that, oh my gosh, it's time for regeneration. Oh, it's my goodness. Oh, I'm staying away. I'm going to go, marry Queen Elizabeth and get a straw hat. And I just, it seemed...
Which at least we finally got to see in The Day of the Doctor.
Yeah, very nice payoff on that. Yes, it's very funny. I just don't know if you serve the story well enough trying to be overly dramatic. Now, we have had the discussion about Capaldi. They have discussed regeneration a lot. But compared to this David Tennant, they've been subtle as heck compared to this. This whole... you kind of expressed in your emails to me privately that you were... you thought that the 10th Doctor in his final story is very mopey. Yes. Now, not consistently mopey. There are times when he shows his charm.
Right.
But this whole... It just seemed a little too... when he first talks to Wilfred in the coffee shop...
Right.
And he's
Which I like. I like that scene. I like the scene where Wilf and the Doctor are just sitting down talking.
Yeah, but he was a little too mopey.
Right.
And I just don't know. It just, I don't understand why. What purpose is this? And maybe you are more you do a fair amount of writing. So
Right.
do you? Maybe you can explain to you what you think they were trying to do, because I don't think it was too obvious to set up. I mean, we know that Tennant is leaving because of the nature of business nowadays and the entertainment, the way you cover things. So I just don't get what purpose of there'll be 4 knocks and your song is ending. Did that help the story? In my perspective, it didn't.
Now, yeah, I get where you're coming from. What my main issue with how the 10th Doctor is portrayed here is the previous story, The Waters of Mars. We ended that story on such a big cliffhanger with the Doctor deciding, oh, I'm the Time Lord victorious. I can do whatever I want. And almost kind of like he's being in denial that he doesn't, like, okay, I'm just, I feel like I can, like I can defy death. I'm not, like whatever's fate is supposedly coming for me. I don't, like I'm rallying against it, which is okay. He's being defiant against his own upcoming demise. I get that. But here there's obviously some things that happen between the Waters of Mars and this story, which of course we know because at the very least the day of the Doctor happened between then. But all of a sudden, he shows up on the Oodsphere. He's trying to be all cocky and like oh, I don't care, whatever. Hey, I got your summons, but hey, I had things to do. I went off and partied, and like I've got my goofy hat, and I got my shades on, and which aren't even sonic, so what good are they? And and he comes out, he does his little like gag with the car alarm with the TARDIS, and of course it falls flat. So it feels like, yeah, he's just in complete denial over his inability to accept his own demise and come to terms with it. He seems like he comes off in this story, in my opinion, as very childish and petulant in a lot of ways. That especially toward his the final scenes with Wilf, just before his big farewell tour, which we'll get into later. But it seemed to me that he was like a sulky teenager throughout most of this story, and it kind of bothered me.
I totally agree. I'm sitting there going, why? First off, why tell him? And why do they know that this is going to happen? Right. Have we established that that the Ood can are psychic?
Well, yeah, they've kind of established that they are psychic.
Okay, they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you watch the Invisible or Impossible Planet and stuff. Okay. So, yeah, and Planet of the Apes.
It just doesn't seem to be a very smart...
Especially as a collective. They seem to have power when they're in that circle, and they kind of harness their psychic abilities. Okay.
I just didn't get it, and I also don't get the whole... I had a big problem, Charles, when he looks like he survived and you hear the 4 knocks.
Yeah.
And then I also have a little bit of problem, and this is totally nitpicking. Why would Wilfred just knock 4 times and stop? Would just keep going, knock, knock, knock. Hey, doctor, knock, knock, knock.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit, because it's got to be 4 knocks. The prophecy. And for him to be kind of, really? I have so much left to do, and you're not important.
Yeah. We'll get into that when we talk about the regeneration, I think.
Okay. So. This doesn't feel in character with the 10th Doctor. Do you?
My big problem is that it's not a very heroic send off for the 10th Doctor.
Right.
And he doesn't go. He's not very noble in this story. You can't, and that's not a pun against Donna.
Yeah.
Just that he's kind of going through the motions, and there's that one scene that he has where he's in control of the Vinvachi ship. They're dodging the missiles and whatnot, and there's one point where he just guns it because he's gunning toward going after the master. And even one of the other characters is like, "Hey, you're going to kill us. What the hell?" Basically, it feels like the Doctor's on a suicidal mission here, and he doesn't care about anybody else around him, which I kind of had a big problem with because the Doctor should be considering these. I mean, I get that he's okay. He's focused on the master. He's adamant. He's so focused on the master that he's not thinking about everybody else. But in my mind, the Doctor that would be a factor.
I agree. I totally agree.
And that kind of bothers me.
Yes.
With this, that he's just so consumed by the master that he's not thinking about everybody else.
Yeah, that seems
out of character.
Yeah, I could actually see Capaldi doing that a little bit more.
Right, because his Doctor is a little colder at times.
Yes, so I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So, but for Tennant's Doctor, it seems very out of character.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I just get the feeling that he's just so like sulking through this, and he's in defiance and he's mad, and we'll get into this later with this tantrum he throws at Wilf unfairly, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
That really bothers me.
Yes.
But otherwise, there was some great stuff in this with him. There's a nice moment where it's a very lighthearted moment where the Doctor has been captured and he's kind of strapped to a gurney, like almost like a one of those like a dolly.
Yes.
And they kind of hustle him out of there without freeing him.
Yes, and that was funny. Like, let me go. No, don't have time. And
there's this big madcap like, no, not down the stairs.
Yes.
So there were things in this, that with scenes with him that I liked. And like I said, I love the scene with him and Wilf actually having a conversation about Donna.
Yes.
And he's like the 10th Doctor shows his concern for Donna. But even when Wilf is pleading, hey, is there something you can do? Because, she needs you.
Right.
And he's just like, no, I don't want to bring up all the stuff that's in her head.
Yeah, which once again reinforces that if you had what happened to Donna happen in this final thing, it would have made it more poignant.
Right. Well, what I don't get about this whole thing with with Donna having this kind of subconscious thing lurking in her head that could go like a time bomb at any moment.
Right.
Get it? Time bomb?
Yes.
And that, okay, we saw that, whenever she has, she gets something that kind of triggers those memories. And when she's threatened, apparently it'll cause an energy wave that will take care, stop whatever's trying to attack her. Great. Okay. Now that the 10th Doctor goes off and regenerates and whatever, leaves Donna behind. What's to keep Donna from like, oh, hey, watching something involving the Doctor on the news or what have you, and all that stuff comes flooding back for no reason.
Well, and then they would kill her or what have it, or cause this big disaster that's never addressed. No, it reminds me a little bit of a few seasons ago with Supernatural. I believe Sam had that, they had blocked off part of his mind that didn't remember hell. Right. And, and so the whole worry was, oh, something's going to break through that wall. I don't know if that worked, totally from my perspective, I don't know if it was a smooth. I mean, it was a way for Donna, because Donna never was going to quit being a companion.
No.
She flat said this is what she loves to do. And so
she had to be forced to leave.
Right. And so I get that they came up with the best they can. I just don't. There is a little bit of hand wave.
Yeah.
And shout out to Karen. Yeah.
I had no problem with writing her out that way. That she had to go because of what was in her head.
Yeah.
But once she's gone,
right.
There's the okay. What's to prevent this? It seemed like it was a dangling plot thread that needed to be addressed, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely.
To resolve that, so that she could go on and have an actual life or whatever, and not have to worry about this thing like coming out at the worst possible moment.
Well, and especially considering that we do see he takes care of her financially.
Right.
I mean, so there is a concern. Once again,
hopefully Donna didn't lose that ticket.
Yeah. Once again, I feel like a little bit the whole, you think I wouldn't leave my best friend protected? Okay,
Right. How
many best friends do you have, Doctor? Anyway, just that's another nitpick of mine that was kind of,
Yeah.
So anyway.
All right. So let's move on to a different topic.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so let's move on to our second topic, The Hunger Games. And this, of course, is the master, the hungry master.
Okay, Charles.
Yeah.
I've already sent you this in email.
Yes.
And so I'm going to ask. I
Go
don't
ahead.
get why. First off, I don't understand why he's so hungry. I don't get what messed up in the, revival spell that they used made him hungry. And also, I don't get the superpower thing he has now. This, even more than Tennant being mopey, this really bothered me in the episode.
Yeah, this is probably, for me, although I like John Simm.
Absolutely.
And I think he's a great master, as we saw in this past season for Series 10. When he's written properly, he could be a great master.
Well, and even in this episode, when him and the doctor are discussing, and he's saying, this drums, this I can't stop this, and they raised me this way. I mean, he really is a good master, but I don't get this whole hunger thing.
Yeah.
So
basically what we're talking about here is, of course, at the end of Series 3, where the Last of the Time Lords, where his master, the Sixth Master, is killed off. And at the end, of course, there's this little tease with a ring that's right out of the end of Flash Gordon movie, where someone comes by, picks up the ring, and like, things are going, like, he'll come back someday. Well, here it is, here at the end of time, at the beginning, where we find out that there was this older woman who essentially belongs to like a master cult or something, where she's part of this ritual. We don't exactly understand how she knows this ritual to resurrect the master. We don't know who really these people are, but apparently it's some kind of resurrection cult, and they bring the master back using DNA from his wife Lucy, and so they bring her back, but Lucy manages to screw things up,
right?
And so that the resurrection doesn't go off as planned. So therefore, presumably because he's got Time Lord energy inside him, the Artron energy, that maybe it's like a faulty regeneration of sorts.
Yeah.
And suddenly he needs energy, food. That's why he's hungry all the time. He's craving that energy.
Yeah.
And to the point where like he doesn't just eat food constantly, like and I did have a problem with that they just kind of like had him just eat,
yeah.
like he talks about, and it just seems so unnecessary. And he goes around and he absorbs the life forces from people. Okay, he's sucking their energy dry to fuel him. But then he keeps having these flickering moments where he's a skeleton. Oh, he's not a skeleton. He's a skeleton again. And then he's able to, like, as you said, all of a sudden he has superpowers where he can somehow just propel himself into the sky.
Yeah, Iron Man like with the repulsor rays.
Fire energy blasts out of his hands.
Yeah.
So it seems like, okay, am I watching Doctor Who or am I watching the X-Men here?
And I don't think you needed that. I truly don't think you needed that. I think you could have, we've seen the Master be a danger in other ways. So we didn't have to just do that.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm right there with you.
And why all of a sudden is his hair frosted? I don't get that. Did he go did he go in for highlights or something and it just got really overdone? Or he went to some kind of stylist or something and get his touch up, or his tips done? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So not sure why that happened all of a sudden, but okay.
Yeah.
And okay, he's decking himself out in a hoodie. Now I get to the fact that this is a faulty regeneration. And because of that, he's a little unhinged. I get that.
Right.
But it just seemed a little too overdone, and it didn't really feel like the Master to me. It felt like some other character called the Master. Yeah, and I
also got the feeling that the cult wanted Saxon back. They thought that this Saxon guy was going to do something. Yeah. And not realizing he's the Master. Even though, the Lucy Saxon is warning, this is a bad idea. I also, I understand one of the questions I asked you, via email is, why would he want to make everyone himself?
Yeah, I was just about to head into that.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead. Then
okay. That's a great segue. Go ahead.
And so I get that he wanted that this was a practice run, as you explained, for doing the Time Lords.
Yeah, to basically take over being the Time Lords.
Right. But I guess we can just say it's because he's mad. But,
It doesn't make sense, this plan.
No, I'm like Terrell Owens, right? I love me some me. So, okay, let's even say that he loves himself much, and we see a little bit of that with him and Missy, but to make everyone yourself seems just a little crazy and impractical.
Yeah, well, I think it's just showing his control over the entire planet, the entire populace. But yeah, it does seem like overkill. It's just like, okay, I want to take care of all these, basically, I want control of Earth. So my plan is to just replace everybody's DNA with my DNA. Not really sure what that purpose is, apart from just control. I get the control.
Yeah.
But the DNA replication, couldn't you just resort to mind control and leave it at that?
Well, I
did suggest to you that, okay, this is him wanting to just mess with the Doctor because he knows Earth is the Doctor's favorite planet. So what would really stick in the Doctor's craw is to make everybody on Earth, including his past companions, look and talk exactly like him. So it just seems like this really half-baked scheme.
Well, and I would also make the argument that you've made this change. So why do not all the other masters have this? Why would they treat him as the leader? Because they all have the same DNA. I would think all of a sudden there would be this mass chaos of a world full of masters all thinking they should rule things.
Exactly. That's what my fundamental problem with this idea is, that instead of just having, okay, I'm the leader of the masters, it would be every master for himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, so that doesn't seem like the best idea. It's like, he couldn't even stand and have another one of him around with Missy around.
Right.
He had to kill her.
Right.
Or
So Charles, if we
yeah,
have learned anything from our years of reading comic books,
Right.
that when the villains all join together, they don't become a cohesive team. They
No.
betray each other
because they all have their own agendas. Yes.
Exactly. So yeah, and I guess maybe because they all have the same agenda, but there's no way the master would put aside his ego to say, okay, at least one of me is being this, in person. Right. So yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think. I mean, I don't expect a vote, but even it would just it does seem like hey, maybe just that was something he programmed in, that they would all be subservient to him. But
okay.
But again, that's not explained.
No, it isn't, and that's a little weird. Very weird. I also got.
You just have to kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of rolling with things in this story.
Yes, there is more than normal.
All right, so let's move on to the third topic.
Okay.
Let's do the Time Lords again. And that, of course, is my nod to Rocky Horror Picture Show with the Let's Do the Time Warp again. But yeah, we get the return of the Time Lords because apparently, as we find out during the course of this story, the whole drumming in the Master's head turns out to be a signal from the Time Lords. And apparently locking onto that signal is what's going to get them out of being locked, in time as a result of the Time War, and bring Gallifrey back. And behind all this, of course, is the return of Rassilon, played by Timothy Dalton, who is a star I guess I should have mentioned earlier. But of course, because Timothy Dalton, you may know from, a couple movies of the James Bond era.
Yes.
So yeah, we've got an actual James Bond. He was also Baron in the aforementioned Flash Gordon, and he's been in stuff like like Hot Fuzz with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, and he was on he's been in so many other things. He was on Penny Dreadful for 3 seasons not too long ago. He was really great in that.
He was really great in Penny Dreadful.
Sir Malcolm.
Yes.
So Timothy Dalton, great actor, tends to spray a little bit when he gets really excited, as you see by the spittle when he's ranting to his fellow Time Lords.
Yes.
Which is a little gross, but okay. So yeah, we get the return of Rassilon, and interestingly, Rassilon used to be dead last time we saw him back in the Fifth Doctor era in the Five Doctors, but presumably the Time Lords brought Rassilon back to help them with the Time War and made him their leader. And this is kind of where we're left off. So what are your thoughts on the return of the Time Lords?
So I was very confused when I watched this the first time, being a new Whovian. And I kind of understood a little bit more this time that this is, in a timey-wimey way, this is at the very end of the Time War that we later find out they pay this off in the Day of the Doctor. And,
Right.
But, the idea they're going to, move forward and they've kind of been in this, they've put themselves in a time bubble, so to speak. And so it was confusing to me. It was neat to see the, Gallifrey. It was neat to see the Time Lords. I imagine someone who is a classic Whovian was especially happy to see it.
Right.
But so I go back and my rating will be better than it sounds like it should be. But you go, okay, you could have had the Master, the return of the Gallifrey, and you could have made a pretty interesting episode just using those factors. You didn't have to have, the Hall of Human being the Master again. You could have just made that a pretty interesting discussion. Right. Because you have Wilfred talking about to the 10th Doctor, but that's a great thing, right? These are your people. You've talked about them. And he said, I only remember the good parts. There's actually toward the end of the Time War, there was a lot of, bad. But we know that not everyone on Gallifrey is necessarily evil. I mean, there is a lot of good to this. So I thought it was a really great twist. I don't know if it was executed well,
right.
but I was glad to see that. And if I use my future, because knowing how they, stuck the landing later, I'm glad this happened.
Yeah, I kind of get the impression that Stephen Moffat, when he was writing the Day of the Doctor, he was bothered by some stuff in the End of Time, like we were, and he felt like he had to clean it up a little.
And I do think he did a great job of that. Yeah,
yeah, and it's a credit to Moffat, I think, because he took some dangling plot threads that were left by Russell T Davies, and he kind of like figured out, hey, I can make this work. And I think he did a good job because, yeah, when you now that you've seen the Day of the Doctor and you look back at this story, you're like, okay, I can see how this works now because of the War Doctor and his decision, and just that why he was having so many problems with the Time Lords during the Time War, and all that. So, and why he was kind of hesitant to bring them back.
Well, and, they keep saying Gallifrey falls, and, right. And then, the great painting where the curator says Gallifrey falls no more.
Right.
And so
I was thinking about that too.
Yeah, the idea is that when they pushed the big red button, they were put in this alternate kind of, once again,
like a bubble universe.
Yeah, a bubble universe that protects them.
Universe,
So great stuff.
Yeah, so they were basically tucked away nice and neatly until they figured out a way to, because they realized they were in that pocket universe and were trying to get out.
Yes.
And so they had sort of accomplished this until things go kablooey, and they have the Master ends up confronting them.
Yeah, and there's that scene at the very, very early on where Rassilon just uses his gauntlet of power, to blow up someone, doesn't give him a chance to regenerate, to show that, he's truly, he's twirling his virtual mustache.
Right.
He's evil.
Right.
So
now you notice Rassilon had that, it was a right gauntlet.
Yes.
That excuse me, his left gauntlet.
Yeah.
Now if you're a Torchwood fan,
mm-hmm.
you know where the right gauntlet went, because that was that resurrection gauntlet that was in back in the Torchwood series.
Oh, very nice. I did not catch that. Yes.
Yeah, and again, that's something that's not explained, but if you watch both shows, you kind of piece it together that, hey, the other gauntlet was with Torchwood.
So the right gauntlet or the left gauntlet takes it away, and the right gauntlet brings you back. Is that the premise? Okay.
That's my guess. That's my guess anyway.
I don't see anyone arguing, so I think it's a great theory, Charles.
Yeah. So, I thought that was interesting. So we had the woman in this story. Now she shows up, and again, this was Claire Bloom's character. That she shows up at the beginning of the story, kind of like over television, and probably some telepathy as well, talking to Wilf, and kind of almost, I don't want to, maybe he's kind of steering him toward the Doctor.
Yeah.
Now the question is, of course, okay, who do you think the woman is? Because it's kind of implied that she's someone very connected to the Doctor. Yeah, and there's been a lot of theories about this.
First off, I don't understand the church scene.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't make any sense. They're talking about being on a monastery. Now, very cool to see the TARDIS in the stained glass. But, I almost...
Yeah, what was the purpose of putting this TARDIS in the stained glass? I don't get that.
And sometimes, like Ron Moore will admit when he was writing Battlestar Galactica, I just we did this because we think it would look cool. Didn't
Yeah.
serve the story or anything.
Well, I'm
so-
sure that's what happened here. Yeah.
Yeah. But I felt watching this, I assumed it was someone close to the Doctor.
Right.
I didn't think it being his, I didn't think it was a wife,
Right.
but I did assume it was either his mom, or perhaps, because I was aware enough that he traveled with his granddaughter at first. So I
Right.
knew
And
enough about that.
So you thought it
Good-
might be Susan?
his mom, yeah, or I could have been Susan or Susan's mom.
Okay.
So it did not bother me. I didn't need it. No.
So was it? So you think it was either the Doctor's mother, or maybe his daughter?
Yes. That's what I thought.
And not Jenny. I'm not talking
Right.
about Jenny.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
But that I didn't need to know. I think
Right.
there's sometimes stories you can fill that in yourself.
Right.
You know, I've read theories that, it could have been, Romana, or even the
Right.
Rani, another female Time Lord. So I thought that was a nice touch. And
I like the Romana theory.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense, because we know she ends up on Gallifrey after
Right.
leaving E-Space,
Yeah.
and she actually becomes Lord President for a while.
Hmm.
So, but it would be kind of nice that, okay, she's still there.
Yeah, it would be.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I like that one. That's my preferred theory, but yeah, from the looks that we got from her to Tennant and whatnot,
Yeah.
it does seem more immediate family to me.
It does, and it is a nice thing at the end when he's got the gun and he's kind of shifting back and forth, and her eyes kind of,
Right.
That was a nice scene. That was a really nice scene, and giving him what to do.
Right. And I kind of like to think that, okay, it couldn't be his wife or his daughter, because presumably they were killed, which is one of the reasons why, at least that's in my theory, my personal theory, that he and Susan left Gallifrey.
Yeah, and
Was that his family was killed.
I think that is a very valid.
Because it would explain why the Doctor has to take care of Susan, his granddaughter.
Yes, and
Because her parents aren't around anymore.
Yeah, and kind of, and I'm thinking it's, you can build in this whole, due to Time Lord society, there were rules that he can't go back and save, obviously, his wife and his daughter,
Right.
or I assume his son-in-law, or there was a way, so partly out of disgust, he and Susan escaped to go through that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on to our final topic.
Okay.
The Long Goodbye Tour.
Okay.
And I chose this title because it's actually the title of the farewell tour for the band Deep Purple
Okay.
from 2017. They actually call it the Long Goodbye Tour.
Yes.
And I thought that was very fitting, so I wanted
Yeah.
to choose that. Because this is a long goodbye tour with
Yes.
the Doctor. So let's set this up a little bit with the regeneration first. So we have it ultimately comes down to the Master helps the Doctor defeat the Time Lords, sends them back to their pocket universe along with Gallifrey. The Doctor, somehow the Doctor survives this huge fall from the Vinvachi ship, crashing through a window, and somehow that doesn't cause a regeneration, which I don't get, because hey, the Doctor did a much shorter fall in Legopolis and died.
Good point.
So yeah, but somehow he survives that and ends up confronting the Master. The Master gets taken away as well in the explosion, and Wilf, as it turns out, had gotten himself stuck inside this device that he's essentially the control booth for this gateway.
Yes.
And it's about to be flooded by radiation. So the Doctor hears those 4 knocks and looks up, and he's like, oh, of course, this had to happen. and this is where the Doctor goes off on this kind of rant against Wilf that really bothers me. So I want to get your thoughts on his realization that he had to go into that booth and give up his life to save Wilf.
It just seems uncharacteristic, Charles, and I know I am...
It doesn't seem uncharacteristic to save Wilf.
No, but it seems uncharacteristic to rant beforehand.
Yes.
It is, and I know I'm beating a dead horse, but this whole mopiness...
Yeah.
I mean, I actually would have seen him letting Wilf out, then going in there,
right,
and then explaining to Wilf what's going on.
Yeah.
And then Wilf going, no, and because the Doctor is different yet the same.
Right.
And one of the quotes is, in all my travels, I've never met anyone who wasn't important.
Right.
So I don't.
We needed more of that.
Yeah, we did need more of that. And, he gets there at the end of the speech, but it's kind of, well...
He makes Wilf feel bad for going in and saving somebody else's life because he goes into the booth to let somebody else out.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, oh, yeah, okay. Hey, I know you were helping somebody out, but, I could have been so much more.
Yeah, it just doesn't...
And it's just like, okay, thanks, buddy. Thanks for, that's really nice of you to say to me there. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're nice to know you're worried about yourself.
Yeah, and it seems uncharacteristic of the Doctor.
Right.
I don't know. And I don't like that at all. I don't find it very heroic.
No, not at all.
I think
it just seems very petulant to me and self-serving.
Yeah, the actions is heroic,
right?
And I like the end after everything goes and the door opens by itself, and he kind of shreds. Oh yeah, now you open.
Right.
It was kind of a nice point.
Right.
But yeah, I
just don't think getting to that point, it really bothered me.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
I don't think it was the Doctor at all.
Now, once again, we're very loosey-goosey with the rules of regeneration.
Yes, we are.
I can hold it off in time enough to go everywhere I want to go.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense. Now,
no.
I'm going to put that aside.
Okay.
I loved seeing all the little cameos of the different characters, especially when you think like Children of Earth had happened and Captain Jack is depressed because of what the choices he had to make, including, killing his own, grandchild and, making those hard decisions. Especially when Sarah Jane Smith, the actress is no longer with us, seeing that poignant goodbye. Is very wonderful. And I guess... Because
this is her final appearance on Doctor Who.
Yeah. And I guess there was an inside joke about someone had mentioned the kids on the Sarah Jane Smith adventure never looked across the street. So,
so they made that joke with Luke, just diving into the street and not looking.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I still say, we would have liked to seen Luke sometime in the actual Doctor. If we were going to do a spinoff, maybe he could have been one of the characters in class. But anyway, we'll move on from there. Yeah. Nice thing, my favorite companion is Martha. So I like to see that. Oh, thank you.
I got my 10th Doctor Martha shirt on, by the way.
So I love seeing her, and and Mickey was treated at times like the dog, as he mentioned. So it was nice to see them together, and the Smith and Jones kind of joke because he was a Smith.
My problem with that, though, it takes like the only two black companions the show had so far. Of course we're going to hook these two up because
fair enough.
They're the black companions.
Very nice. Okay, that's fair enough. and I especially love the Family of Blood series. So to see him going back, the idea that when he was human or didn't know, he was the Doctor, he actually felt for that. And the different, I think that's a wonderful episode. And to see him, was she happy? And to kind of do that was pretty slick. So yeah, I was okay with the goodbye tour, even though it makes no logical sense that while you're,
because we don't know
dying,
how long that in the Doctor's timeline this actually lasts. No,
but as a viewer, I was happy to see that. So I'm going to give it a pass because it one of the
nostalgia.
Yeah, and I think years ago Peter David had written some writing rules, and one of them was if you give the audience what they want, they'll forgive you almost any of loss in logic. And so I wanted to see this, so that's why I'm okay with it.
That.
Yeah. I'll have to find those rules somewhere.
That's great.
So anyway,
that's great.
Okay.
I'm sure I read that somewhere because I'm a big Peter David fan, but I probably forgot about it. But that's great. I was kind of noticing that this farewell tour takes up 15 minutes of showtime. So that's like a good chunk of the episode is just devoted to the Doctor wandering around saying goodbye to everybody. It was great. It was great to see those cameos. Now, I think the most effective one is, of course, the last one where he goes back to 2005, just before, and this kind of takes us back to Series 1, just right before Series 1 begins, right before Rose, played once again by Billie Piper. It's New Year's Day, 2005, and presumably 3 months or so before she meets the Ninth Doctor. And there's a great line where he said, the 10th Doctor says, "Well, I think you're going to have a really great year," which I kind of liked.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was a nice poignant set off, and that led us right to the Ood returning.
Yeah, and
to sing the Doctor to his end. I
acknowledge that as you have, this was Russell T Davies saying goodbye to this show that he had brought back with great success.
Right, his entire run.
Yeah, really has been, and so by having one of the last scenes David Tennant has with anyone of being Rose kind of makes it a really bittersweet, ending. And then
I thought it was poignant. Yeah,
it was very poignant. I agree.
Yep, and so that was great. This, of course, we get to hear the Ood singing Veiled Decem, Goodbye 10. Is that what that means, actually, if you're not a Latin buff? And so that leads us where the Doctor kind of staggers and staggers and staggers through the snow into the TARDIS, where he finally regenerates. He sets the TARDIS in motion because, hey, don't you want the TARDIS in motion when you're regenerating? So just leaving it exactly where it needs to be.
Yes.
And, so he takes off, and then his final words, and again, they're kind of petulant here, in my opinion. His final words are, "I don't want to go."
And, go ahead, Charles.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
We've discussed this before. I do not find those words necessarily petulant or, I find them very, wistful and poignant. And, the reality is, regeneration is, this was not something he wanted to do. And there's other people that said he knew he's running out of regenerations at this point.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. And so, but I also give it a little bit of leeway that I think, in a way, the Doctor is speaking for David Tennant and Russell T Davies, that even though they knew it's time to go, I'm not sure they knew it was time to go, and they made that choice. No one forced them out. But I also when you get down to that, it's I don't know if I want to go. So I forgive it for that way.
And I get that point. I think that's a very fair point.
And I get your point too.
Yeah.
Like when because we just watched Eccleston's and him going, "You were fantastic," and so was I. And that it was a much more. And right now, if I had to rank, the Eighth Doctor's regeneration has been my favorite so far. I just loved his regeneration, which we did not think we were ever going to get. And so,
the Night of the Doctor. So I think my main issue with those words is that if it had been, where he had been we talked about him being petulant to Wilf earlier, and talking about I could have done so much more. If at this point here at the end, if he had kind of come to terms with it, and I think if he would have been like acting like he was more okay with it, if he had hit the acceptance phase here, right at the end, I think it would have been much better.
And
like accepting of his fate.
Totally agree with that assessment. I also think if he had not been petulant throughout the episode and came through this with this, very sad, I just don't want to go. Right. Life is so beautiful. I just like a wistful,
and kind of like resigned, like we talked about with the Sixth Doctor's regeneration in his audio story.
So I truly, and just like you said, you see my point. I see your point too. I'm not saying you're wrong whatsoever. I totally agree with that, and I even, part of me can agree with it the same way you, I can see your point, Justine, agree with it. So, either way, the ending of one of the great, doctors. And
again, that's just my viewpoint. I don't expect everybody to agree with it. So,
absolutely.
I totally respect everybody else's other takes on this.
I know you do.
So obviously we have the regeneration, the big erupting energy, just as before with Eccleston regenerating into David Tennant. And we get the appearance of Matt Smith. And immediately Matt is he's Matt Smith. He's the 11th Doctor right off the bat. He's talking about his voice, because it's kind of squawking a little bit, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a girl," and then, "No, I'm not a girl," and then he's like pointing at his hair, and like, "Oh, still not ginger," and he's like feeling his face. He's like, eyes, ears, nose, chin, blimey, because he knows he has a big chin this time, and then he realizes, oh, hey, the TARDIS is crashing because apparently the regeneration just wiped out the TARDIS control room for some reason. Yeah. And because we had to make room for a new set, so we got rid of the old set. And so he screams Geronimo just as the TARDIS is hurling back to Earth, which of course eventually leads us into the 11th hour. And we've already talked about the 11th hour, but so we'll leave that there. But so what did you think? What was your take seeing Matt Smith for the first time?
I remember really liking it. I did not catch the ginger reference. It didn't bother me, but I didn't now that I understand the in joke. The in joke. And by the way, Doctor Who is the first time I had heard the word ginger for people with red hair. It is not something I'd grown up knowing. And so
it's not exactly an American term. We just call them redheads over here.
I know. I remember watching one of the maybe Doctor Who Confidential or some kind of special, and they showed David Tennant watching the regeneration, and him saying how brilliant he thought Matt Smith was. And I remember going, man, that's kind of a small sample size. I think you're being overly kind.
Right.
Now that I have seen, all of Matt Smith's work, I do see the genius of this. I do see how you just said it very well. He set up the 11th Doctor immediately in those few lines.
Right. And those lines were written for the 11th Doctor by Stephen Moffat. So yeah, essentially, like when Russell T Davies wrote "I Don't Want to Go," that was Russell T Davies' final words as well.
Yeah, and supposedly, right, he sent the script and said, "Okay, I'm going to let you write which I think is just such a lovely thing." And I hope that Moffat is doing the same thing for the new showrunner.
Peter Capaldi. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to learn Chris's full name.
Chris Chibnall.
Chris Chibnall. Yes. Chibnall. So I hope that
Chibnall.
See, that's why I'm not getting around it yet.
You got a whole year to practice.
Yes, a whole year. Oh, I know.
Well, let's just put it there. Okay, 9 months.
Yes,
to practice.
absolutely.
Let's just put it that way. We'll talk about it
yes, and unfortunately, we are going long as we tend to be, so we can't discuss. We're going to have to discuss the news about the cast and everything another time.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No. This has been a joy. I feel like I've talked a lot, but it was, especially rewatching this, knowing what Matt Smith is going to do with the role, and how I've talked a lot over the past couple of years, music-wise, that Off the Wall, Michael Jackson's album was amazing, and it had done so well commercially and review-wise. And so when he set to make his next album, the only person that thought he could do better was Michael Jackson, and he did Thriller. So I get the feeling, like at Tennant, you go, oh, there can never be a better modern, Doctor.
Right.
He has brought this to a level of popular culture that you can't go better. And then Matt Smith and Stephen Moffat take it to another level. Right. And seeing that, that's coming, and I got a smile on my face. And you just mentioned we don't need to talk about the 11th hour. It was really tempting for me just to go straight into the 11th hour and just kind of start watching.
I know.
Yeah.
Because it is those two episodes just really connect really well.
Absolutely.
All right. So, do you have a rating for this story?
I do. My heart wants to give it a 10 because it's at the time we thought it was the last time we were ever going to see Tennant play the Doctor.
Yep. Then the Day of the Doctor happened.
Yes, we did, which is such a blessing in so many ways, entertainment wise.
Right. Or you could watch him in the Sarah Jane Adventures because this wasn't, the End of Time wasn't his last recorded story as the Doctor.
Yeah.
It was actually a story called The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith on the Sarah Jane Adventures. So if you're not quite willing to let go of the 10th Doctor yet, you can watch that.
So I'm going to give it, because of the flaws, but with my heart, I'm going to give it 8. Is it blue or brown suits?
Nice.
Based on Wilfred's, sometimes in a blue suit, sometimes in a brown suit.
Yeah, and we should just mention that Bernard Cribbins did a really great job as Wilf in this story.
Oh, he was just amazing. He
was a great final companion, not really official companion, but he was a great final companion for the 10th Doctor.
Absolutely.
I gave it 8.5. I was a little more generous. 8.5 master doppelgangers.
Nice.
Because you've got all those masters, might as well.
Yeah.
And so that was my rating. So I was a little more generous than you, but I get where you're coming from with the 8.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I mean, in my heart, this is a 10, and it's perfect. And this is, I'm being a little hard because I was a little hard on some of the other regeneration episodes, so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being the U.S. judge nor the Russian judge in the Olympics.
Exactly.
So do you have a couple of quotes for me?
Well,
Charles?
I do have
Okay.
some quotes. I didn't know if you wanted to get going, because I know we are running along here.
No, I'm good so far.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead. If you have a quote, why don't you get start?
Yeah. Speaking of Wilfred,
Yeah.
I know you though. I bet you got a plan, haven't you? Huh? Come on. You've always got a trick up your sleeve. Nice little bit of the Dr. Flim Flam sort of thing. Eh? And the doctor just stares at him, and then Wilfred, oh, blimey. Wilfred was so great in this episode because he never lost hope, and he never lost belief in the doctor. Like when he's, in the church, we don't understand why, but he says, oh, if he came back, that would make Christmas. So yeah, I loved him in this episode. Yeah,
and he's just talking about how, like, you're such a wonderful man, and I don't want you to go. And
right.
Yeah, it's hard not to like Wilf. He's he's the grandfather everybody wants.
Yes.
And he's such a great character. He's one of my favorite characters from Russell T Davies.
Absolutely.
Love that character. Okay, so my first quote is from the Doctor to Ood Sigma at the beginning, where he arrives on the Ood sphere, and he's like, now. Sorry, there you are. So where were we? I was summoned, wasn't I? The Ood in the snow calling to me. Well, I didn't have to come just straight here. Had a bit of fun. Traveled about, did this and that. Got into trouble, you know me. But it was brilliant. I saw the phosphorus carousel, the great Magellan Gestalt. Saved a planet from the red carnivorous maw. Named a galaxy Allison. Got married. That was a mistake. Good Queen Bess. And let me tell you, her nickname is no longer... Anyway, what do you want?
Yeah, there's so much in there. Unpackage it. I almost picked that one too.
Yes,
I only
no longer the Virgin Queen. Apparently.
Absolutely, yes. And I love that we got a payback on that.
Yeah. In the Day of the Doctor, yes.
Yes. So,
although hopefully he didn't sleep with a Zygon, because ew.
Ooh. My last quote is, and we have talked a lot about, I want the Doctor and the Master to be Golden Age Superman and Lex Luthor.
Okay.
But I love when the Doctor says, "You're a genius. You're stone cold brilliant, you are. I swear you really are. But you could be so much more. You could be beautiful. With a mind like that, we could travel the stars. It would be my honor. Because you don't need to own the universe. Just see it. To have the privilege of seeing a whole of time and space, that's ownership enough."
Yeah, this is obviously the ideological difference that the Doctor has with the Master, that they have these different viewpoints on how the universe should be handled.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. My next quote is the Doctor kind of musing on his time, and he says, "It's not that I'm an innocent. I've taken lives. I got worse, I got clever, manipulated people into taking their own. Sometimes I think a Time Lord lives too long."
I really liked that quote, and I think especially after Waters of Mars, which is a fabulous episode, that fits very into that.
Right. Okay. Do you have any other quotes?
No, I do not, Charles.
All right.
How about you?
I have one last quote really quickly. This is Ood Sigma, who says at the end, "We will sing to you, Doctor. The universe will sing you to your sleep. The song is ending, but the story never ends." I hope that wasn't your quote.
No, it wasn't. Though it could have been. I actually thought about that one. It is, the beauty of this, right, is God rest the Doctor.
Yes.
Long live the Doctor, right? So, yes,
right.
Absolutely. Well, good. All right, so, Charles, do we have a little feedback?
We do. Do you want to do the feedback first, or do you want to reverse the polarity really quickly?
Oh, yes, please. I was just thinking because we're hitting long, but yes, please do the reverse the polarity.
and we won't. This won't take long because we're going to reverse the polarity really quickly this week back to 1981 for Logopolis, the seventh serial from season 18, 1981, written by Christopher H. Bidmead. Now, we've talked about this pretty recently. We only talked about this about 5 episodes ago, but I think it factors in for a number of reasons, because we have in that story, we have the Doctor and the Master agreeing to work together, which they kind of do in the end of time. And we have that, again, we have the Doctor falling from a great height, as in both stories. And then, we have, of course, a regeneration story at the end. So we have kind of like the Master being involved in, the Doctor's death and regeneration once again. So
yeah. That's a great pick.
So so really quickly, that's that. Check out Logopolis. Again, we just talked about it here about 5 episodes ago. In episode 92, if you want to listen to that a little more in detail.
Yeah.
All right. So we do have feedback. We've got 3 people this week.
Yay.
And so let's first off, we have the return of Drew Cauffill, who writes in. This is kind of picking up from our discussion of Bad Wolf, The Parting of the Ways, where Drew writes in and says, I grew up among a whole family of Doctor Who fans who refused to acknowledge that there were other actors who played the Doctor besides Tom Baker, as well as only seeing the PBS reruns of the 80s. So I had a bias burned into me for my whole childhood of only Tom Baker being the, quote, right, unquote, Doctor.
Okay.
When the show rebooted, I watched it with an open mind. Loved Eccleston's portrayal, was quite sad to see him go, especially so soon, but figured it was a trial run for the new series of a classic. After seeing my first ever regeneration on screen, I went to watch and devour all of the classic series I could find. Yay.
Yay.
Good for you, Drew. Good call. Regarding the story, I found it gripping, but was satisfied / shocked at the Bad Wolf reveal. Actually thought Rose would stay Earthbound. I was really surprised at the revival of Captain Jack. I loved the Daleks' return and thought it was fitting to have them back and help wrap up this new beginning. Seeing the starkly contrasting to Eccleston, from Eccleston to new kid in David Tennant as the next Doctor only intrigued me to want more. This fan thought it all just fantastic, simply fantastic. And that's from Drew Cauffill. So
very nice. I have Holly's. If it's okay with you, I can read that.
Yeah, if you want to read Holly's, that's fine. Go ahead.
Good. So Holly, from Wisconsin, Holly Max, always. Yep. I appreciate her consistency. Yes. Hey guys, wow! I had forgotten how good this 2-parter farewell was. The Master up to his usual hijinks, the Time Lords, and Rassilon 2. Really loved Wilf in the story by giving the Doctor a pep talk and that he would be honored to be considered a father to the Doctor. I agree, that was a really nice moment. Yep. We also got more backstory to the Master and who was behind his hearing the drums. I can't say I blame the Doctor at all for hightailing it Ala Gallifrey when he did, and how he doesn't want to get involved in Gallifreyan politics. When I first saw this, I really thought that the Doctor was going to make it out alive, until we heard the 4 knocks coming from Wilf, needing to be rescued, and then saying that he could stay where he was and that he was an old man. The Doctor's little tantrum is not directed at Wilf. He's okay with helping him. He's just mad that there's more things he wanted to do, and now his time has come. This little gem took me 2 rewatchings after it first aired to realize that. I like the grand farewell tour to his past companions to let them know that he's going to regenerate, and if they do cross paths again, it will be with a different face. A side tangent and hope for me is that down the line somewhere, Don will run into the Doctor again and not go into meltdown from remembering the memories that were erased. I'm just thinking that when the 11th Doctor got the whole new cycle of regenerations, I think it may have reset the meta-crisis thing that the Doctor and Donna went through. Well, I'll wrap it up from here. Holly from Wisconsin. Thank you, Holly.
Yeah, I'd like to think that as well. I'd like to think that Donna somehow got that out of her system, but it'd been nice to have at least that explained.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so but fingers crossed for Donna because we like Donna.
Yeah, so, we do.
All right. Yep. All right. And the final feedback we have this week is, of course, Paul from Australia,
Yay.
who writes in again. Hi, Charles and Jesse. First off, I've got to say that David Tennant had an amazing run as the Doctor, and I know he brought a lot of fans to the show, including my wife. These 2 episodes were a fitting way to end his run. Having said that, personally, I'm not such a fan of the first episode. I love that they brought the Master back, but this damaged version didn't cut it for me, as they made him like a demented, hungry superhero. Oh, that sounds familiar.
Yes.
Who else was thinking that this episode?
Yes.
I wonder. A certain partner in time. I always like the Master when he's scheming and manipulative and coming up with plans that ultimately don't work. Yeah, he's really bad with his plans sometimes.
Yes, he is.
But hey, at least they're interesting. I did like the fact that Wilfred got to be the companion. It was a great idea, and his interaction with the Doctor is perfect. Totally agree with you, Paul. Do you guys believe that the woman in white, Time Lady, is the Doctor's mom, or could she be someone else from the Doctor's past? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Well, we've kind of talked about that, but
yes.
I think she obviously has a connection to the Doctor.
Right.
And I like Timothy Dalton as Rassilon and as the narrator. What a good piece of casting. The Time Lord seems so desperate. Probably that's which is why they brought Rassilon back from the dead. It was great to see them back, if only briefly. It was also interesting and shocking to see the Doctor brandishing Wilfred's gun, probably an indication of how desperate he had become. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. The knock 4 times moment by Wilfred is truly brilliant and shocking, showing a Doctor who thought he had beaten the prophecy only to realize he hasn't. Love it. As for the farewell tour before he regenerates, I think it's great, again showing a Doctor who doesn't want to let go, that is indulging himself and reliving his past, which he seldom does. His final words of, "I don't want to go," bring a lump to the throat every time I watch it. Sending you, as always, my kindest regards, Paul. P.S. Okay, my guess for the next regeneration, Charles. Will you pick an earlier regeneration? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Possibly. Can't wait to find out.
Well, thank you, Paul. And what a nice segue.
Yep.
Charles, what are we discussing next?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we're not going to back to the classic regenerations because we pretty much covered those.
We did.
We've covered those before in other episodes. So we still have one more modern era regeneration to go. And that is what we're going to talk about next time here on Next Stop Everywhere. We're going to talk about the time of the Doctor. And that, of course, is the wrap-up to in the 2013 Christmas special, saying goodbye to Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor. So this is, of course, the final part in the Name of the Doctor, Day of the Doctor, Time of the Doctor trilogy, unless you count the Night of the Doctor, the 8th Doctor story. But so definitely looking forward to talking about that with you, Jesse.
So I hate to say this, but do we take time to go over the 8th? Do we? I mean, I know it's a very, like an 8-minute short, but do we discuss that sometime?
We could.
Okay, I mean, just a thought. I do,
Oh, you want to talk about the regeneration? Well, maybe we could. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that as a separate episode, or do you?
Yeah, maybe so.
I don't think we have enough in that story for a full episode.
Yeah, I don't either. But the idea, though, we just spent an hour and a half talking about this one, so
maybe we could. Maybe we could.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But it is. I'm excited to rewatch this. I have not spent time to rewatch Matt Smith's final episode, though I may have to find time to do the whole trilogy because I want to see it. But yes, absolutely.
Well, do you want to combine the Night of the Doctor and the Time of the Doctor into a single episode? Or do you want to devote more time to the Night of the Doctor?
Yeah, I think we're going to spend. I think we're going to have to spend. I think Matt Smith's final appearance will give us at least an hour, if not another hour and a half episode.
All right.
So yeah, all right, that's good. We'll
sorry, I'm so long-winded, everybody.
No. It's both of us are. This is great. So, Charles, if someone wants to give us feedback, besides saying, "Hey, you guys are both too long-winded," how can they?
They can obviously reach us like Holly, Paul, and Drew did at nextstopeverywhere@gmail.com. Don't forget the SMG. And then you could also reach us on the Twitter machine at nextstopsmg on the Twitter machine, or on our Facebook page, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. And you could drop us a line there as well. We would be happy, more than happy, to read your comments on the old podcast device.
Absolutely.
And Jesse, where can they reach you?
I can be reached at Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. I am on the Facebook, Jesse Jackson. Look up Louisville, Texas. And I can be heard talking Bruce Springsteen on Set Listing Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast. Right. And I appreciate you guys checking that out.
Please do.
Charles, how about you? Where can people hear you and find more of your great work?
Well, I don't know if it's great, but you can find more of my work at on Twitter at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, or on Instagram at Charles Skaggs, where I post some pictures now and then, and Facebook, of course, at Charles Skaggs here in Hilliard, Ohio, or on Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus, and then of course my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee and hot.
Damn good coffee and hot, where I talk about Doctor Who and Next Stop Everywhere, and all kinds of comic and TV and movie news. That's stuff I find interesting. Lots of Doctor Who news that we unfortunately ran out of time to talk about this week.
Yes.
But you can find stuff like that there. Please check me out. And also my other two podcasts that I do for the Southgate Media Group, the Phantom Zone podcast, which I do with friend of the show, Karen Lindsay, and Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse. And yes, we are continuing Twin Peaks. Just because the Showtime series has ended doesn't mean that we are, because there's lots of Twin Peaks left to talk about. And we just finished reviewing the soundtracks. And, oh, hey, we've got the recent Criterion release of Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me on Criterion Collection that we're going to discuss next. And then Twin Peaks The Final Dossier, the novel by Mark Frost, that's coming out here shortly. So lots of stuff to talk about. Very
nice. Very cool. Well, Charles, as always, this is a blast.
Yep.
I love visiting with you and talking all things Whovian.
Yes.
Thank you, listeners, for listening to us. I'm going to end with: some people live more in 20 years than others do in 80. It's not the time that matters, it's the person.
Very nice.
All right. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone. Come on back.
I don't want to go.